She fled her abusive fiancé and found peace on Lakota land, until he came with blood in his eyes. Emily had always thought she could handle anything. She had grown up strong, independent, and careful, but over the past 2 years, something inside her had slowly started to break. At first, it had been small things. Derek, her fiancé, would snap over tiny mistakes or tease her in ways that left her stomach tight and her chest heavy. She had laughed it off in the beginning, telling herself she was overreacting, that he didn't mean anything by it. But the teasing turned into harsh words, and the harsh words slowly turned into control. He wanted to know where she was every hour of the day. He questioned her friends, even her family. He picked fights over things that didn't matter, making her feel guilty for things that were never her fault. And when she tried to explain herself, the anger in his eyes would make her shrink back, afraid to breathe too loudly or speak too boldly. Emily's world, once filled with laughter and friends and freedom, had shrunk into a cage where every move was watched and every word weighed. The final straw had come. One cold evening in December, snow covered the ground outside, making everything seem softer, more peaceful. But inside Derek's apartment, the air was sharp and tense. Emily had returned from work tired, carrying a small bag of groceries, only to find Derek waiting for her with that familiar expression of anger. He had accused her of lying about a simple meeting with a friend, a lie she hadn't even told. He shouted and cursed, his face red, his voice booming, echoing off the walls. Emily's heart had raced. Fear had gripped her completely. She had seen the warning signs too many times. Things broken in anger, objects thrown carelessly. His eyes filled with rage. That night, she realized that she could not stay. She could not continue living in constant fear, waiting for the next moment when his temper might turn physical again. She needed to escape, and she needed to escape now. So Emily made a decision. She spent the next few days planning quietly, carefully. She packed only the essentials, a few changes of clothes, her journal, a small amount of money she had saved, and some identification. She left behind the gifts he had given her, the mementos of a relationship that had turned poisonous. Every piece reminded her of fear and pain, and she could not afford to carry them any longer. On a quiet night, when she knew Derek would be distracted, Emily slipped out of the apartment. The city was dark and empty, with only the soft hum of streetlights and the distant sound of a passing car. She moved quickly, trying not to make a sound, feeling her heart pounding in her chest. For the first time in a long time, she felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. She was leaving, but the unknown stretched ahead of her like a wide open field. She didn't know exactly where she would go, but she knew she needed safety above all else. Emily's first stop was a friend's house, someone she trusted completely. She stayed there only briefly, explaining her situation in whispered tones. Her friend offered support, encouragement, and a place to rest. But Emily knew she could not stay there for long. Derek's reach was long, and she needed to disappear somewhere that offered not just temporary safety, but a chance to heal and rebuild. She remembered hearing about a small Lakota community far from the city in South Dakota, a place known for its welcoming people, strong traditions, and connection to the land. She had read stories of people who had come there seeking refuge, and how the community had embraced them, helping them find peace and purpose. It seemed like a distant dream, but Emily decided that was exactly what she needed: a fresh start, far from fear, in a place where she could breathe again. The journey was long and tiring. Emily took buses and trains, her small bag always close, her eyes scanning the crowds but keeping herself to herself. Every small noise made her heart jump, Every glance from a stranger felt like a test, but she pressed on, telling herself over and over that freedom was worth the fear and that safety was worth every discomfort of the journey. When she finally arrived at the edge of the Lakota land, Emily felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. The wide open spaces, the rolling plains, and the sky stretching endlessly above her were unlike anything she had known. The wind whispered across the grass, carrying a quiet welcome she almost felt in her chest. The community itself was small but vibrant, with people tending gardens, gathering in circles, and sharing smiles with each other. It was a world away from the city's chaos and from the suffocating control of her past life. Emily approached cautiously. She was nervous. She knew nothing about the community, about their customs or rules. But the people she met were gentle and kind. One woman, who introduced herself as Mika, greeted her with warmth and curiosity. Mika had an easy way of making Emily feel seen without prying too deeply. She offered her a place to stay temporarily and encouraged her to take time to rest and recover. The first days were strange and quiet. Emily spent hours walking the land, feeling the sun on her face, listening to the birds, and letting herself breathe in a way she hadn't in years. She kept her eyes and ears open, learning about the rhythms of the community, the way meals were prepared and shared, the way the elders spoke with wisdom, and how children ran freely, laughing without fear. Each small observation helped Emily feel that perhaps, for the first time in her life, she could belong somewhere. As the days passed, Emily began helping where she could. She assisted in the community center, cleaned spaces, prepared food, and listened to stories from elders and other newcomers. She found joy in small tasks, satisfaction in seeing others smile and feeling a sense of contribution. Slowly, a tight knot of fear inside her chest began to loosen. She could sleep through the night without waking in panic, and she could walk outside without feeling watched. Yet even in this peaceful place, Emily's past lingered like a shadow. Sometimes, in quiet moments, she would remember Derek's anger, the sharpness in his voice, and the fear that had once controlled her every thought. She knew she could not completely forget, and perhaps she never would, but she also understood that she had the right to heal, the right to live without fear, and the right to reclaim her life. In the evenings, Emily would sit by herself on a small hill overlooking the plains, the sunset painting the sky in soft colors of orange and pink. She felt a deep connection to the land, as if it were quietly telling her that she was safe here, that she could grow and thrive. The wind brushed against her face, carrying with it a promise that this could be the place where her heart could finally rest. By the end of her first month on Lakota land, Emily had begun to transform. The tightness in her chest had softened, replaced with a cautious but growing sense of hope. She had met people who respected her, listened to her, and treated her with care. For the first time in years, she felt like she could make choices for herself, without fear of judgment or violence. She began to dream again, not just of survival, but of living fully, of building a life on her own terms. And yet, somewhere deep inside, Emily knew that her past had not disappeared entirely. She had escaped Derek's control, but the memory of him lingered like a storm cloud on the horizon. She didn't know if or when it would come back, but she refused to let fear dictate her now. She had taken the first, hardest step. She had run toward freedom and toward peace, and she was determined not to turn back. As Emily lay down to sleep that night, listening to the quiet of the plains, she allowed herself a small, brave thought: that she was stronger than she had ever realized, that she could survive, and that maybe, just maybe, she had finally found a place where she could be safe, where she could be free, and where she could begin again. Emily woke up early, as she had been doing for weeks now, greeted by the soft light of dawn spreading over the rolling plains. The air smelled of fresh grass and earth, and the quiet hum of birdsong filled the morning. She had gotten used to this rhythm, this sense of calm that had seemed impossible in her old life. Every day on the Lakota land reminded her that she had finally escaped the cage of fear that had held her for so long. Her mornings began with small tasks. She helped in the community kitchen, chopping vegetables, stirring pots, and preparing food for everyone. At first, the work felt simple, almost repetitive, but Emily found it grounding. Each task reminded her that she could contribute, that she could be useful, and that she belonged somewhere. For the first time in years, she felt a quiet sense of pride. One morning, as she was arranging food on long wooden tables, an elder named Mika approached her. Mika was a woman with gentle eyes and a voice that seemed to carry wisdom effortlessly. She had watched Emily from a distance for weeks, noticing how careful yet determined she had been in finding her place. "You are learning quickly," Mika said softly, smiling. "But do you feel truly at home here yet?" Emily hesitated. I think so, but sometimes I still feel like I don't belong. Like I'm just visiting someone else's life." Mika nodded knowingly. Belonging is something you carry inside, Emily. You must trust yourself and the land to guide you.
It is patient. It will wait for you to find your place.
Those words stuck with Emily. She began to explore the land more intentionally, walking through fields, along small streams, and into wooded areas where the sunlight dappled the ground. She would take deep breaths, letting the quiet and the vast space fill her with a sense of freedom she had never experienced. It was here, in the openness, that she felt the weight of fear slowly lift from her shoulders. The community itself was alive with stories and traditions. Emily spent hours listening to elders recount tales of the land, of ancestors, and of the struggles and triumphs that had shaped their people. Each story held a lesson, a thread of wisdom that Emily began to weave into her own life. She was learning that strength did not always come from force. Sometimes it came from patience, observation, and the courage to continue moving forward. Emily also began to form friendships with others in the community. There was a young man, Thomas, who had grown up on the land and knew its every corner. He would show her trails, hidden groves, and quiet spots where the wind carried the songs of the past. Thomas was patient with her, never prying into her history, simply offering companionship and a sense of normalcy that Emily had almost forgotten existed. Other women, too, welcomed her gently, sharing meals and stories, and sometimes their own struggles. Emily realized that many of them had come to the land seeking refuge, like her. They understood fear, loss, and the need to rebuild a life from scratch. Being among them made Emily feel less alone, less ashamed of the life she had left behind, and more determined to grow stronger. One afternoon, Mika invited Emily to sit with her under a large oak tree at the center of the land. The tree's wide branches cast shadows across the ground, offering a peaceful place for reflection. "Emily," Mika said, "healing is not just about leaving the past behind. It is about understanding yourself, embracing who you are, and learning that you are worthy of love and peace. The land can guide you, but you must also guide yourself." Emily listened, absorbing the wisdom. She thought about the years she had spent living in fear, the moments when she had doubted her worth, and the nights she had cried silently in the darkness. Now, sitting beneath the oak tree, she felt something shift inside her. She realized that her strength was not only in escaping her past, but in choosing to grow beyond it. Over the next few weeks, Emily began keeping a journal. She wrote about her days, her thoughts, and her emotions, capturing the small victories and the moments of clarity. Writing became a form of therapy, a way to untangle the knots of fear and sadness that had followed her for so long. She wrote about the sunsets she had watched, the quiet laughter of children playing, and the moments when she felt the land itself supporting her journey. Emily also began to engage more with the community's traditions. She participated in group activities, helped prepare for local gatherings, and learned simple crafts that had been passed down through generations. She found joy in learning, in the rhythm of creation, and in the sense of connection to something larger than herself. Each small step helped her rebuild confidence and trust in her own instincts. Despite this growing sense of peace, Emily could not entirely shake off moments of unease. Occasionally, she would catch herself glancing over her shoulder, feeling a flicker of old fear that reminded her of Derek. But with each passing day, these moments became fewer and less intense. She was learning to recognize fear without letting it control her. One evening, Emily attended a small gathering at the community center. People were sharing stories, music was playing softly in the background, and the smell of cooked meals filled the room. Emily listened, laughed, and even shared a story of her own, a simple tale about a bird she had seen in the morning light and how its freedom reminded her to keep moving forward. The community responded warmly, applauding gently, and Emily felt a sense of belonging she had never known. The days on the Lakota land were not always easy. Emily still felt the pull of uncertainty, the occasional pang of loneliness, and the remnants of fear from her past. But she faced each day with determination, knowing that she had already come further than she ever imagined possible. She learned that healing was not a straight path, but a journey with ups and downs, moments of triumph and moments of struggle. Slowly, Emily began to feel a deeper connection to the land itself. She noticed how the wind moved through the fields, how the streams carried water across the plains, and how the sky changed color with the rising and setting sun. There was a rhythm to the land, a quiet strength that seemed to whisper encouragement. Emily began to understand that she was not just finding safety here, she was finding a foundation, a place to grow roots and nurture herself in ways she had never allowed before. Emily also started thinking about her future. For so long, she had only focused on survival, on escaping Derek's control. Now, she could begin to dream again. She thought about learning more skills, perhaps teaching others in the community, or creating a space where women like her could find safety and guidance. The possibilities felt endless, and for the first time in years, Emily allowed herself to hope. One morning, as she walked along a quiet trail near a creek, Emily paused to take in the beauty around her. The sunlight reflected off the water, birds chirped in the trees, and the air was filled with a gentle, calming breeze. She felt a sense of peace that she had never imagined possible. She realized that she was not defined by her past, but by her courage to move forward, her willingness to embrace healing, and her determination to reclaim her life. As Emily returned to the community center, she noticed Mika watching her from a distance. The elder's eyes were warm, almost approving. Mika waved, and Emily smiled back, feeling a quiet sense of pride. She had come so far, and though her journey was far from over, she knew that she was capable of facing whatever challenges lay ahead. Emily's time on the Lakota land had already transformed her. She had learned that peace was not a distant dream, but a choice she could make every day. She had discovered the strength within herself to face fear, the courage to embrace new beginnings, and the wisdom to understand that healing was a journey, not a destination. And as the sun set over the plains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Emily felt a profound sense of gratitude. For the first time in her life, she felt truly alive, truly safe, and truly free. She had found a place where she could heal, where she could grow, and where she could finally imagine a life filled with hope, connection, and peace. Emily's days on the Lakota land had grown calmer, filled with work, learning, and a sense of belonging she had never imagined. Yet even in this peaceful place, shadows from her past began to creep quietly into her life. It started subtly, almost like a whisper at the edge of her awareness. She would sometimes feel a strange unease, a chill that had nothing to do with the cool morning air. A car she had noticed once seemed too familiar, parked too long along the road near the community. A distant figure in the distance, too still, too silent, made her heart flutter. At first, Emily tried to dismiss these feelings. She told herself that she was imagining things, that she had spent so long living in fear that her mind was still wired to worry constantly. But the feeling persisted, gnawing at her calm. Every evening, as she walked along the trails or returned from the community center, she felt as though unseen eyes followed her. The sense of safety she had worked so hard to build began to tremble, fragile and delicate, as if her past life might reach through the distance to touch her again. Meanwhile, somewhere far away, Derek's life had changed little. He had refused to accept that Emily was gone. At first, he had called her constantly, left messages, and tried to track her through friends and social media. When none of these efforts worked, his frustration grew into obsession. His anger, once contained within arguments and occasional threats, had hardened into a single, consuming purpose: to find her and force her back under his control. Emily noticed small signs that something was not right. One afternoon, while helping in the community kitchen, she heard the distant sound of a vehicle engine, an unusual sound in a place where few cars passed by. She glanced through the window but saw nothing unusual. Still, the feeling of unease settled into her chest like a stone. Later that day, she found a small note tucked near the edge of her bed, words scrawled hastily, threatening, though unsigned. Her pulse quickened, and a cold shiver ran down her spine. Mika, noticing Emily's distress, approached her quietly. "Emily," she said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Do you feel something troubling you?" Emily hesitated, but then nodded. She showed Mika the note. The elder read it calmly, her expression serious. "Fear follows those who carry it," she said softly. "But we cannot let fear control us. You are strong. In this land, this community will support you. But you must also remain vigilant. The past does not always let go easily." Those words were both comforting and alarming. Emily realized that she could not ignore the danger she might face. Derek had been unpredictable, controlling, and relentless in the past. If he had found any clue to her location, there was no telling what he might do. Yet, despite the rising fear, Emily resolved not to let terror dictate her life again. She had already reclaimed so much, and she refused to surrender it. Over the next few days, Emily began noticing patterns in her surroundings. Shadows seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly. A distant figure appeared too often in the distance, just beyond the tree line. Once, she thought she saw a man's face briefly at the edge of the road. But when she looked again, it was gone. Her mind raced, caught between relief that she was alert and the gnawing anxiety that her past might be following her. She confided in Thomas one afternoon while walking along a narrow trail near the creek. He listened patiently as she described what she had seen and felt. "It's hard to know who is watching from far away," he said quietly, "but you are not alone. Whatever comes, we will face it together." His calm reassurance reminded Emily of the strength of the community. It gave her courage, even as the tension inside her grew. At night, Emily's dreams were restless. She would wake suddenly, heart pounding, visions of Derek's angry face flashing behind her eyelids. She remembered his shouts, the way he had held her in arguments, the sharp fear that had consumed her in the city. But in these dreams, something was different. She no longer felt completely powerless. She imagined herself standing firm, unafraid, defended by the strength she had built over the past weeks. It was a small, quiet victory, but it reminded her that she had grown beyond who she once was. One morning, Emily awoke to find a new message on her phone, an unfamiliar number. She did not answer it. Her instincts screamed caution. Instead, she showed it to Mika, who nodded. It is important to respect your own safety first. Do not confront danger alone. Reach out for support. You do not have to face this by yourself. Emily knew that she could not allow fear to isolate her. She began taking precautions, walking the trails with companions, avoiding long stretches of solitude, and staying connected to the people she trusted. Her routine remained the same: helping in the kitchen, participating in gatherings, learning traditions, but with an added awareness, a watchfulness that reminded her that danger could appear when least expected. Despite the tension, Emily continued to grow. She started teaching small skills she had learned in the city, writing, organizing, basic crafts, to children and young women in the community. Their curiosity and joy reminded her of the simple pleasures in life, and of the possibility of building a future that was safe, productive, and fulfilling. Every lesson she taught was also a lesson in courage for herself as she faced the uncertainty of her past creeping closer. Then, one evening, Emily noticed a man lingering at the edge of the community, just beyond the tall grasses. His presence was silent, almost statuesque, but the sense of menace radiated from him. Her heart lurched as recognition struck. She could not be certain, but something about his stance, his gaze, was familiar. Fear surged through her, cold and sharp. She realized that Derek, or someone from her past, might finally have found her. Emily immediately sought guidance from Mika. Together, they devised plans to ensure her safety. The community rallied quietly, reinforcing her living space and ensuring someone was always nearby when she was outside. Emily practiced emergency routines, finding comfort in preparation. The elders taught her that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Each day, Emily grew stronger, learning to balance vigilance with the freedom she had fought so hard to earn. Even as the threat loomed, Emily refused to let it consume her. She continued exploring the land, walking along trails with Thomas or other friends, feeling the wind on her face and the sun on her skin. She painted in her journal, capturing the beauty of the open plains, the colors of the sky at dawn, and the quiet strength of the community around her. These small acts of creation reminded her that she had not lost her life, and that she could still live fully even with fear in the distance. Days turned into weeks, and the tension continued to rise. Emily knew she could not ignore the danger forever. Derek's obsession had a long reach, and she needed to be ready. But she also realized that she had grown immeasurably. The woman who had run from fear in the city was now a person who could stand, even in the presence of threat, with the support of a community and the knowledge of her own strength. Emily began training quietly in skills she had never considered before: self-defense basics, situational awareness, and how to read subtle changes in her environment. Mika and other elders taught her about alertness and intuition, using knowledge passed down for generations. Emily's mind became sharper, her instincts keener, and her sense of empowerment stronger. She felt that even if Derek did arrive, she would face him not as a frightened victim, but as a woman who had reclaimed her life and her courage. Late one night, as Emily looked out over the plains, the moonlight casting silver shadows across the land, She felt a mixture of fear and determination. The peace she had built was threatened, but it was not gone. She had learned that strength came not only from physical safety, but from inner courage, from the ability to keep moving forward despite uncertainty. And she knew that no matter what came, she would face it with the wisdom and support she had gained here. The shadow of her past had arrived, or at least she could sense it. But Emily was no longer the same person who had run from a life of control and fear. She had learned to stand tall, to trust in herself, and to rely on a community that had become her family. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew that she had the power to meet them, and that the land itself, with its endless skies and open fields, would always remind her of freedom, resilience, and hope. Emily had grown stronger over the weeks, but nothing could fully prepare her for the moment when the past collided with the peace she had built. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the plains in soft gold, she noticed a figure at the edge of the land. At first she thought it might be a traveler, or perhaps someone passing by on the road. But something in the way he stood, rigid, tense, with eyes fixed in her direction, made her stomach drop. Her heart pounded, and a familiar fear surged through her. She ran inside to find Mika and Thomas, her closest allies in the community. "It's him," she whispered, barely able to breathe. "I'm sure it's him." Mika's expression hardened. "Then we must act quickly," she said. "We will protect you, but you must remain calm. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward even while your heart is racing." Emily nodded, swallowing her fear. She had come so far, and she refused to let terror take her back to the life she had escaped. She felt a surge of determination. For the first time, she understood that safety was not just about running. It was about standing firm, facing what must be faced, and relying on the strength of herself and the community around her. The community immediately rallied. Women, men, and even children who could assist moved quietly but efficiently to ensure Emily's safety. The small cabins where she had been staying were secured, entrances watched, and escape routes planned. Thomas stayed by her side constantly while Mika coordinated with the other elders. Emily watched, amazed at the unity and calm efficiency of the people around her. She had never felt such support, and it strengthened her resolve. Dusk fell, and the man, Derek, finally stepped into the clearing. His eyes were sharp, filled with the same anger and obsession she had known in the city. But now there was a sense of disbelief in his gaze. He had expected fear, submission, perhaps even tears, but he saw Emily standing tall, calm, and surrounded by people who would not allow harm to come to her. "Emily," he called out, his voice rough, "you belong with me. You can't hide forever." Emily's voice did not tremble. She spoke slowly, carefully, with a clarity that surprised even herself. "I don't belong with you. I belong here in a place where I am safe, free, and respected." "You cannot take that from me." Derek's face twisted in fury. He stepped closer, but the community held its ground. Mika and Thomas positioned themselves between Emily and him, their presence steady and strong. The air seemed to grow heavier, charged with tension. It was as if the land itself was holding its breath. Derek's anger escalated, but he realized quickly that this confrontation would not be easy. The community did not cower, and Emily did not flinch. He had expected weakness, but instead he faced unity and courage. The realization hit him like a blow. She had changed. She was no longer the frightened woman he had controlled. Emily felt fear, yes, but it was mingled with determination. She remembered all she had learned, her strength, her awareness, the wisdom Mika had shared, and the support of the people who now protected her. She knew that courage was not reckless, it was deliberate, grounded in knowledge, preparation, and love for oneself. Derek made a step toward her again, and Emily's heart raced. She felt the adrenaline, the tension of a confrontation she had hoped never to face. But then she noticed the subtle movements of the community around her. Everyone was calm, focused, and ready. They were not waiting to attack. They were standing as one, offering protection without aggression. In that moment, Emily realized the true power of the community. It was not just about defense or preparation. It was about the unity, the wisdom, and the strength of people standing together. She felt a deep sense of connection, a knowledge that she was no longer alone, and that fear could not control her life any longer. Derek's anger reached a peak. He shouted, his words sharp and threatening. "You will come back to me, you will!" But Emily's response was calm, firm, and unwavering. "No, I have chosen my life. I am free. And you will not take that from me." The standoff continued for a tense moment, the golden light of sunset casting long shadows across the land. Derek realized that threats would not work. He could not break her spirit, could not dismantle the strength of the community, and could not reclaim control over someone who had already chosen freedom. Finally, realizing that his obsession was met with resistance he could not overcome alone, Derek faltered. He glared at Emily, his chest heaving, his fists clenching, but the certainty in her eyes was unshakable. She had grown too strong, too aware, and too supported to be intimidated. Emergency authorities were contacted discreetly by the community, and help was on its way. Derek's options narrowed, and eventually he retreated, frustrated and angry, but no longer a direct threat in that moment. Emily exhaled, feeling the tension leave her body in slow waves. She had faced the person who had haunted her for so long, and she had stood her ground. She had not run. She had not cowered. She had confronted her fear and survived. After the confrontation, the community gathered with Emily to ensure she felt safe and supported. Mika placed her hand on Emily's shoulder. "You did not just survive," she said softly. "You stood tall, with courage and wisdom. That is strength, and that is freedom." Emily nodded, tears of relief and gratitude filling her eyes. She realized that this experience, though frightening, had shown her just how far she had come. She had taken the first steps to reclaim her life on the Lakota land, and now she had proven to herself that she could protect herself, that she could face danger, and that she could trust the support of others without losing her independence. In the days following Derek's departure, Emily began to process everything that had happened. She reflected on the fear, the courage, and the overwhelming sense of community that had allowed her to face him without surrendering. She realized that her journey was about more than escape. It was about empowerment, healing, and reclaiming control over her own life. Emily continued her daily routines, but with a renewed sense of purpose. She walked the trails with greater awareness, taught her skills to the younger members of the community, and participated in cultural events with pride. The fear that had once ruled her life was now a reminder of how far she had come, rather than a chain that held her back. The confrontation had also strengthened her connection to the land. The wide open plains, the golden sunsets, and the quiet whispers of wind through the grass were no longer just comforting. They were a source of power. Emily felt that the land itself had watched over her, supporting her, and reminding her that freedom and courage were within her reach. Even at night, Emily no longer felt haunted by the past. She slept more peacefully, knowing that she had faced her greatest fear and emerged stronger. The nightmares that had once plagued her were replaced with visions of hope, of community, and of the life she was building on the Lakota land. Though she remained aware that her past could return, Emily was no longer controlled by it. She had learned that strength came from preparation, from courage, and from the support of those who care. She had discovered that freedom was not just a place, but a state of mind, and that peace could be maintained even in the face of danger. By the end of the week, Emily felt a sense of quiet triumph. She had confronted the man who had tried to take her life from her, and had not only survived but had grown stronger in the process. Her confidence had blossomed, her connection to the community deepened, and her belief in her own resilience was unwavering. As Emily stood on a small hill overlooking the plains one evening, the sky painted with hues of pink and orange, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had faced the storm, and now the calm felt earned, deserved, and lasting. She realized that life could be difficult, that threats could come unexpectedly, but that courage, community, and self-belief were powerful shields that could protect her more than fear ever had. Emily knew that her journey was not over. There would be challenges ahead, and she would face them with wisdom, vigilance, and strength. But she also knew that she had achieved something remarkable. She had reclaimed her life, faced the shadow of her past, and found a place where she was not only safe but empowered, supported, and free. After the confrontation with Derek, Emily felt a new sense of freedom settle over her. The fear that had followed her for so long no longer held power. It had tried to shadow her peace, but she had stood firm, and now the calm she had fought so hard to build seemed even stronger. Every step she took on the Lakota land reminded her that she had earned her life back, not just by escaping, but by facing the challenges and choosing courage. The community had become more than a safe place. It had become a family. Emily woke each morning to the sounds of birds, the soft rustle of the wind, and the distant laughter of children running through the fields. She moved through her days with a quiet joy, helping wherever she could, learning wherever she could, and sharing herself with those who had shown her kindness and acceptance. Each task she performed, from preparing meals to tending gardens, was a small act of connection, a reminder that life could be gentle, steady, and full of meaning. Emily continued to learn about the traditions and history of the Lakota people. She attended gatherings where elders told stories of courage, resilience, and wisdom passed down through generations. She listened with rapt attention, feeling the weight of their words and the strength embedded in their culture. Slowly, she began to see parallels between their lessons and her own life. She realized that healing, like growth, took patience, care, and the courage to face challenges rather than hide from them. One day, Nika invited Emily to help guide a small group of newcomers who had arrived seeking refuge. Emily felt honored and nervous, unsure if she was ready to take on such responsibility. But Mika's gentle encouragement reminded her of all she had learned. "You know what it is to be afraid," Mika said. "You also know what it is to be brave."
Share that knowledge. It will help others, and it will strengthen you even more.
Emily agreed. She spent the day guiding the newcomers, showing them the land, explaining traditions, and helping them feel at ease. She told them about her own journey, not in full detail, but enough to show that fear could be overcome, that courage could be found, and that healing was possible. Watching the newcomers smile, relax, and begin to trust in their surroundings, Emily felt a deep sense of purpose. She realized that her experiences, painful as they had been, were not wasted. They had equipped her to help others find peace and strength. Life on the Lakota land became a rhythm that Emily embraced fully. She explored further into the hills, along trails she had not yet walked, and into quiet corners of the land that felt like hidden treasures. She wrote in her journal every evening, capturing her reflections, her gratitude, and her dreams. The journaling had become a form of meditation, a way to process her thoughts and emotions, and a reminder of how far she had come. Emily also nurtured relationships that had become central to her life. Thomas, Mika, and other members of the community became trusted companions and friends. They shared meals, laughter, and quiet moments together, creating bonds built on trust, respect, and mutual support. Emily realized that part of her healing was learning to rely on others, to share her life without fear of judgment, and to celebrate the strength found in connection. The land itself continued to be a teacher. Emily noticed small details she had overlooked before. The way the wind shifted through the grasses, the songs of birds at sunrise, the subtle changes in light across the plains throughout the day. She learned to walk with awareness, to observe and appreciate the beauty around her, and to find solace in the quiet rhythms of nature. It reminded her that life, like the land, was steady, enduring, and full of opportunity for growth. Over time, Emily began thinking more about her future. She wanted to do more than survive. She wanted to thrive. She considered ways to contribute meaningfully to the community, perhaps through teaching, organizing activities, or creating spaces for healing and support. The thought of helping others who had faced fear and trauma gave her a new sense of purpose. She had found peace, yes, but now she wanted to help others find it too. One afternoon, as Emily walked along a trail she had come to love, she encountered a group of children playing near a small stream. Their laughter was contagious, and for the first time in years, Emily allowed herself to fully smile without hesitation or caution. She joined in their games, showing them how to skip stones and balance along the edges of the creek. The joy of the moment reminded her that life could be simple, playful, and full of wonder, something she had long forgotten. Emily also spent time with Mika, learning more about healing practices, storytelling, and the wisdom embedded in the traditions of the land. These lessons went beyond skills. They were life lessons, guiding Emily in understanding herself, embracing her strength, and moving forward with confidence. Mika often reminded her gently that courage was not always shown in grand gestures. Sometimes it was seen in the quiet persistence of living fully and authentically each day. At night, Emily would sit on the small hill overlooking the plains, watching the stars emerge one by one. She felt a sense of gratitude that went deeper than words. She thought about the fears she had left behind, the struggles she had faced, and the growth she had achieved. Each star seemed to reflect a moment of her journey, a reminder that even in darkness, there was light, guidance, and hope. Emily's confidence and self-awareness grew steadily. She no longer feared the shadows of her past. Instead, she acknowledged them as part of her story, evidence of her resilience. She had faced her greatest challenge, and now she could embrace her life with clarity and joy. The lessons of the land, the support of the community, and her own determination had transformed her. She was no longer defined by fear. She was defined by courage, growth, and hope. The final test of her transformation came unexpectedly. A visitor from a neighboring town came to the community seeking guidance and refuge. Emily volunteered to help, using all the knowledge she had gained to provide reassurance, direction, and encouragement. She guided the newcomer through the land, introduced them to community members, and shared gentle advice. Watching the person relax and begin to trust in the safety of the environment, Emily felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She realized that her experiences had not only strengthened her, but had equipped her to help others find their own strength. Emily also began to see herself in a new light. She noticed the way she carried herself, the way her voice had become steady and confident, and the calm determination in her eyes. She had transformed from a frightened young woman into someone who could face danger, make choices freely, and support others in their journey. This self-awareness brought a quiet pride, a sense of accomplishment, and a reassurance that her life was her own to shape. As the seasons changed, Emily's bond with the land deepened. She witnessed the first snowfall of winter, the way it blanketed the plains in silence and beauty. She experienced the warmth of spring, the growth of new life, and the steady rhythm of summer and fall. Each season offered lessons, patience, renewal, resilience, and appreciation for the present moment. Emily embraced them all, finding joy and wisdom in the cycles of nature. Emily's story, once defined by fear and uncertainty, was now one of renewal and healing. She had escaped a life of control, faced the person who had threatened her peace, and embraced a community and land that supported her growth. She had discovered her strength, her courage, and her ability to live fully, independently, and with purpose. In the quiet of the evening, as she stood on the hill watching the sun set over the plains, Emily felt a deep sense of completeness. The journey had been difficult, filled with fear, doubt, and uncertainty. But it had also been transformative. She had learned that healing required patience, courage, and support, and that freedom was something to be nurtured, cherished, and defended. Emily knew that life would continue to bring challenges, as it always does, but she no longer feared them. She had learned how to face them with courage, wisdom, and the knowledge that she was never truly alone. She had found a place where she could belong, a community that loved and supported her, and a land that offered peace, strength, and beauty. And as the stars began to twinkle in the vast sky above, Emily smiled.